Over the course of the last 4 to 5 years, I've read a ton of investing books, and in fact I've written 3 investing books myself. And while some books are certainly much better than others, I think it's fair to say that the core ideas of all investing books are pretty much the same, and they can be summarized in a few key lessons. So in this video, I'll try to condense these lessons into a 12 to 13 minute video and share the 5 big ideas that you will encounter in pretty much every investing book. And at the end of the video, I will point you to the #1 investing book that I think every investor needs to read during his or her investing lifetime. Alright, hey there, my name is René Solomon, and I believe that starting out with investing can be overwhelming at first. You'll come across all these different terms, tools, strategies, and portfolio construction recommendations. And as you are planning to invest your hard-earned money, there's certainly some pressure not to mess up, which is basically a recipe for inaction, procrastination, and paralysis. Sure, you could just grab 1 or 2 investment books, but then again, where do you start? If you type in investing book on Amazon, for example, you get over 30,000 results. How should you know which investing books are actually worth reading? Which ones are written for beginners and which ones are targeting more advanced investors? Well, I think I can help. I've probably read more than 100 investing books over the course of the last 4 to 5 years. So here's big idea #1. The single biggest advantage an investor can have is to have a long-term orientation and a long-term investment horizon. The idea is that you are essentially exploiting that most other investors, institutional investors, mutual funds, hedge funds, they tend to have a very short-term investment horizon. They trade stocks quickly and too frequently. And essentially the stock market is an environment in which most participants are obsessively focused on short-term data and weekly, monthly, or maybe quarterly performance. But if you take a longer-term view, short-term price movements and short-term performance pressures become pretty much irrelevant. I'll start by sharing a graph from one book that I think every investor, every beginner investor in particular, should read. This graph here is from the book Stocks for the Long Run, and it illustrates the power of long-term compounding in stocks by comparing the total real returns of US stocks, bonds, bills, gold, and the dollar between 1802 and 2012. If you do the math, compounding your capital can be incredibly lucrative. But this only works if you have a clearly defined process, stick to that process for a long time, and are inactive most of the time. Pat Dorsey, he highlights exactly this in the book The 5 Rules for Successful Stock Investing, and explains why being impatient and trading too frequently can be incredibly costly. He writes, "Never forget that buying a stock is a major purchase and should be treated like one. You wouldn't buy and sell your car, your refrigerator, or your DVD player 50 times a year. Investing should be a long-term commitment because short-term trading means that you are playing a loser's game. The costs really begin to add up, both the taxes and the brokerage costs, and create an almost insurmountable hurdle to good performance. If you trade frequently, you'll rack up commissions and other expenses that over time could have compounded. Every $1 you spend on commissions today could have been turned into $5.60 if you had invested that dollar at 9% for 20 years. Alongside fees, another headwind to long-term stock compounding that is mentioned by Dorsey are taxes. In one of my last videos, I actually compared 3 strategies: short-term trading, long-term trading, and long-term investing. And I highlighted that assuming all 3 investors earn exactly the same annual rate of return before taxes, their after-tax financial outcome would be completely different. I've shown that after 40 years, the net worth of a long-term compounder investor that pays taxes only once at the end of his investing life, when he finally cashes out, is more than 3 times larger than the net worth of the short-term trader that is paying taxes much more frequently. 3 times larger. And this brings us to our big idea #2. To think long-term and think like an investor, you need to think of stocks as actual ownership stakes of actual real businesses and not just ticker symbols that you can see, flashing green and red lines on your screen. The idea was first articulated by the father of value investing, Benjamin Graham in his famous book, The Intelligent Investor, which, by the way, is Warren Buffett's favorite investing book of all time. In fact, Warren Buffett once said, "People buy a stock and they look at the price next morning and they decide to see if they are doing well or not doing well. It is crazy. They are buying a piece of the business." That is what Graham, the most fundamental part of what he taught me. You are not buying a stock, you are buying part ownership in a business. And thus, you will do well if the business does well. To truly adopt this business owner mentality, you might want to compare stocks to real estate. You would never buy a house, sign the purchase agreement at, say, 9 in the morning, and then call your real estate agent at 3 in the afternoon to check what the price of the house is now a few hours later. And you wouldn't even call him after 3 months. If someone would do that in your social circle, I'm pretty sure you would call him crazy. And the reality is that stocks, just like real estate, are not pieces of paper, not some ticker symbol on your screen. The long-term returns of stocks do not depend on some random variables. No, the long-term performance of stocks will be driven by how well the underlying business does and how much cash profit the business will generate over the course of your ownership period. Now, obviously, to understand and anticipate whether a business does well, you need to understand the business. Just thinking of yourself as a business owner is worthless if you're not capable of actually understanding the nature of the business that you own, to understand how the business is actually generating profit. And if you are unable to, at least roughly project the future trajectory of that company, well, you should not be invested in that stock. This is what Kenneth Marshall describes in his book, Good Stocks, Cheap. The value investing model begins with a fundamental question. Do I understand it? The question stems from our recognition of stock as nothing less than an ownership stake in a business. Understanding a business would include things such as how the company actually earns money, how much money it makes on each unit sold, where it operates geographically, how the competitive environment looks like, how the company distributes its goods or products, whether the business has plans for new products and services, its target group, its legal and operational form, to name just a few examples. Another idea that is associated with the mentality of a business owner is that if you are incapable of understanding a business along these basic parameters, or if you are incapable of understanding what an investment product that is offered by a bank actually does, you should absolutely stay away from that business. Terry Smith, the founder of Fundsmith, he writes in his book Investing for Growth, Reginald Mitchell, the designer of the iconic Spitfire fighter plane, once said, "If anybody ever tells you anything about an aeroplane, which is so bloody complicated, you can't understand it. Take it from me, it's all balls." The same is true in investment. How many investors have bought, or rather been sold, quote-unquote structured products without truly understanding the risks involved? My personal favorite to illustrate this point is a fund launched in 2011 by Parkstone Asset Management called the Tracker UK Managed Alpha Fund. This described itself as a securitized, derivative, low-cost, actively managed, multi-asset structured investment. I wonder what it does. I always think that if you can't understand what an investment does, it is because you are not meant to understand it. So don't invest in it. Which brings us to our next big idea. Big idea number 4. As an investor, it's important to understand that a capitalistic system can be brutal. Essentially, capitalism is all about competitors trying to take down other companies that are doing very well. If a company, for example, records high profits, earns high margins, and earns high returns on the investments it makes, maintaining this position is not an easy task. Hamilton Helmer writes in his book, 7 Powers, a business must achieve power or else face ruin. What he means by this, by the term power, is that companies with the best shot at maintaining a leading position are companies with some kind of structural advantage, a power that makes it hard to copy what they are doing. The authors of the book Capital Returns, for example, write, the aim is to look for stocks which have strong competitive positions. Such companies may benefit from network effects, occupy secure niches, be firmly embedded in an industry supply chain, or enjoy pricing power because their products are sold through third parties more concerned with quality than price. So big idea number 3 is that you want to own these truly outstanding businesses. For example, owning valuable intellectual properties that can easily and repeatably be monetized would be a common example for such a competitive advantage. It's virtually impossible to copy characters like Donald Duck, Daisy and Goofy and the Disney villains or the Marvel characters. And creating new characters, shows or games with the same prestige as The Lion King, Toy Story 4, Pokemon or Mario and Luigi is very hard and the odds of success are very low. Which is why Disney or Nintendo are most certainly competitively advantaged companies. Gautam Bait outlines in his book Joys of Compounding. Competitive advantage is defined as a company's ability to generate excess returns. That is ROIC less cost of capital. A sustainable competitive advantage is defined as a company's ability to generate excess returns over an extended period of time, which requires barriers to entry to prevent competitors from entering the market and eroding the excess returns. So in summary, great businesses are those with an ever-increasing stream of profits and cash flow. They earn high returns on their growth-oriented investments, which in turn will lead to great stock returns. And ideally, you want to find companies that are earning high returns on investment that are at the same time growing their revenue at premium rates. And that's our last big idea. For example, Seth Klarman hit the nail on its head in his book Margin of Safety, when he wrote, "The faster the earnings or cash flow of a business is growing, the greater the business's present value." And this is probably why Mark Mahaney articulated the very same idea more than 30 years later in his book Nothing But Net. Consistent 20% plus top-line growth is 3 to 4 times larger than that of the S&P 500 and hard to sustain. It can often reflect large market opportunities, relentless and successful product innovation, compelling value propositions, and top quality management teams. This is exactly what you want to be looking for in good long-term investing opportunities. If companies can sustain premium growth for a long enough period of time, they may even become multi-baggers, or in an ideal world, 100 baggers. 100 baggers are stocks that return $100 for every $1 invested, which means that a $10,000 initial investment would turn into $1 million US. Chris Meyer, he has basically popularized this term. And he writes in his book, "There's no way around it. Almost all of the businesses in the 100 bagger study were substantially bigger businesses at the end than when they began." So you need growth and lots of it, but not just any growth. You want value added growth. You want good growth. If a company doubles its sales, but also doubles the shares outstanding, that's no good. You want to focus on growth and sales and earnings per share. Now, I said at the beginning of the video that I'll give you some book recommendations at the end of this video. So, if I could keep only one book on my investing bookshelf, it would probably be the book 100 Baggers by Christopher Meyer, which I just referenced. It simply encapsulates all of the investing ideas that I believe in, and Chris Meyer is most certainly a quality-focused investor, and his approach resembles my own strategy quite a lot. Okay, before you leave, if you want to learn more about the impact on taxes on your long-term investment returns, I think you should watch the following video next. Take care.